What's up everybody, we are back for another video and today we are pulling the fuel tank out of the car. Today is the 5th of January. Yesterday I got quite a bit of cleaning stuff done on all the parts that I've pulled out already, so I thought I'd quickly run through that and what I've done and the parts that I've ordered, and then we can start pulling this fuel tank out. That will be the last piece that needs to come out before we can start swapping the chassis legs in. So, to give you a quick idea of what I did yesterday, I basically did a whole bunch of cleaning. So I started cleaning all the hardware and everything for the rear brakes. I did order a kit which replaces all of the springs and everything for the hubs. Rather than cleaning all of the little springs and all the rest of it, I just threw them in the bin, ordered some new ones and cleaned up these parts. And then over here I have a couple of control arms that are all cleaned up. I've also removed the ball joints and bushes out of these. And then over here we have some more arms which are all cleaned up. These ones are completely done. These two, I can't get these bushes out. My press won't get those bushes out, so I'm gonna have to take those somewhere. And same with these. So I've got the ball joints out, but I still have the bushes in these, so I'm gonna have to take those somewhere to get done also. Pretty happy with the progress there. And the one other thing that I have done is clean one of the rear shocks. I'll show you that. So just for comparison, there's a cleaned up shock, and here is what it was looking like. So as you can see, there's quite a difference between the clean one and the filthy one. So the shocks are in good working order, but they do look a little bit crusty, especially the ones in the front. They're really rusted out. I have thought about replacing the Bilsteins, but then by the time you replace the Bilsteins and get lowering springs, you're into coilovers anyway. So I may just go to coilovers, but that's a decision for another day. It is time to start ripping this fuel tank out. So I am going to chuck you on time lapse now, and we're going to pull this fuel tank out. So underneath the car here, I have drained the fuel tank. There is a little bit left in it, but I'm not too worried. And then there's four 14mm bolts that hold the fuel tank in. I've tried to make sure there's nothing in the way, so when I drop it, it doesn't get all tangled up and whatnot. So, the other thing I did actually was I unbolted the fuel filler neck from the top where it feeds into the side of the car. And as you can see, there's a lovely bit of rust there, which will have to be fixed. But anyway, I'm going to try and unbolt this thing. Wish me luck, because I have no idea how I'm going to do it. I think I'm just going to manhandle it. Well, I finally got the fuel tank out. That was absolutely horrible. I drained a lot of fuel out of it, but there's still a lot of fuel in there. So it's still just draining off there at the moment, as you can see. But the fuel tank is out. And now, all I think I've got left to do is pull out the hard lines for the brakes and the AYC pump that's tucked away underneath here. I've got to pull that out. And I think that's about it. So once I pull the fuel tank out of the way, we'll have a proper look under there and see how much rust is under the body of the car. I can see more patches of rust, so I'm not looking forward to it, but what can you do? The fuel tank is out, but you guessed it, there's more rust. On the top of the tank here, the rust, I think it's salvageable. I'm hoping that the connection for this hard line into the tank is okay. If that's okay, I'm just gonna wire wheel this down, and I've got some special rust protectant stuff to put on, so I'll just wire wheel off what I need to, clean that up. So that sucked, but what sucks even more is I was hoping this hadn't gone too far, but it looks like it has. So as you can see, this thing's completely rusted out. Even in here, it's kind of hard to see, but in the little seam for the shield for the fuel filler neck, it's all rusted through there too. So I'm gonna have to order another fuel filler neck, clean that up. Now it's time to get under the car and look at all the rust. There's more than I thought, but it's not too bad. Anyway, let's check it out. Right, so as you know, this is the driver's side chassis leg, and this is the leg that has the worst of the rust in it. It also goes up into the floor of the boot. I think that's salvageable, but then as we come over here, there's still more rust down the seam here, and then it goes all the way into there. It goes all the way into there. Now I don't think it's bad there, I think that's just on the seam from where it's all seeped down over time. I am concerned about this piece here, because what it means is typically when people do the chassis restoration, they cut the chassis leg through here and just replace the back part. Because if you have to replace this piece, it means that you've got to go into there, and then up inside the car you've also got to cut out the floor of the car so you can actually get into where you need to be able to weld it all up. So I'm really not happy about that. That's gonna suck if I do have to do that. Besides that, this flap here has got a bit of rust around it. It looks like it's just superficial stuff, so I should be able to clean all that up. So over here as well, it's just a little bit of rust on the surface, so that's all good. And then we get around to the passenger side. I think the likes of this is just surface rust that's just from everything seeping down over time. I should be able to clean that up. This side doesn't look as bad. I should be able to clean all that up. I can't see under here yet because obviously there's brake lines in the way. It doesn't look as bad as the other side, but again, if I have to pull all this off and drill out the floor and cut holes in the floor and everything, it's gonna really suck, and it's kind of outside of my area of expertise, so we'll see. There's the other chassis leg. There's the worst of it there. As you can see, she is full of rust all the way through. There's the AYC pump. This here is just the bracket on the side of the AYC pump, so next thing we've got to do is pull that out. The other thing I noticed is here are all the fuel lines that run from the front of the car. They all wrap around. What I didn't know is there was this hard line here that runs up over the top of where the fuel tank sits. So I wasn't aware that that hose was there, that hard line, so I'm gonna have to pull all that out as well. All in all, I'm not very happy with the amount of rust that's under here, but so the other thing I was talking about with the rear chassis leg and having to cut a hole in the floor is, I believe the chassis leg comes through underneath the car here, and then there's a flat piece that sits in here. That flat piece there, to access it, you have to cut a hole in the floor to be able to get to it. And that there is this piece here I'm talking about, that big flat piece there. So this is where the majority of the rust is under the car. People normally cut the chassis leg here so that they can just replace that piece. It looks like I need to replace this piece too. If I do, then it means that I have to somehow cut holes in the floor and everything to get that flat piece in through here. So most people just stop here, but I'm gonna have to go deep. Okay, so it's now the next day. Yeah, I think it's Thursday the 6th of January now. Yesterday afternoon, I got the fuel tank out as you saw, and then I actually pulled the AYC pump out, which is in really bad condition. So I'm glad I've got the other spare there. So to show you what's happened, so this here's the old crusty AYC pump from the Evo. And as you can see here, the housing has cracked from the erosion. So there's just a piece of alloy that's supposed to be part of the casting, and it's cracked right the way around here. To show you in comparison, this is the same piece here. So on the top you can see the two hoses going into the unit, and that bit of the housing there where the green tape is cracked. So I'm super happy that I have that second pump. There are some parts off the old one that I do need to borrow because parts on the other pump were broken. But that's all right, I should be able to make one pump that works out of the two. So the other thing that I did yesterday was I started marking out all of the spot welds in the boot of the car so I know where I need to drill. So as you can see, there's quite a few in here. They basically go all the way around. That's where the cross member will be, and then the other chassis leg all the way to the back. I believe there's some spot welds here that I'll have to drill out to get the end of the chassis leg to detach from the back of the car. And then once I've drilled all those out, I also need to go into the wheel wells. In here, I need to get a wire wheel off all this paint and all of the seam sealer, so I can see where the spot welds and whatnot are, to drill everything under here as well. And then after that, everything should pop out. So there we have it, we're making a bit of progress. I'm going to chuck you on time lapse now, and we are going to start drilling out these spot welds. Okay, so I've drilled out all the holes for the driver's side chassis leg. I ended up using an 8mm drill bit. As you can see out here on the back, things are starting to come apart. So there's the drill bit there that there's specially made for drilling out the spot welds. So now what I need to do is I need to wire wheel off all the seam sealer and paint under here so I can see where all the spot welds are. And to do that, I've got my cordless angle grinder here with a wire wheel on here. So let's see how this does. I'll chuck some eyewear on so I don't get anything in my eyes and see what happens. What I've done here is I've just quickly whipped through, and with a paint pen I've just marked out roughly where I need to go with the angle grinder to expose all of the spot welds. So basically there's a strip of steel through here that has the spot welds on it that holds the chassis leg here. That's part of the chassis leg. It holds it to this panel here. So I'm just going to wire wheel all of this crap off and around through here. Those are spot welds there where those dots are, and then there's a couple in here, and there's heaps of spot welds along there. So time to expose all of this and go from there. Right, so now we can see a bunch of spot welds all through the chassis leg. So typically when people do this, they usually cut the chassis leg roughly about here. I think I'm going to have to go further, which is going to suck. I'm going to have to go into the body here, but I am going to cut it here and pretend like I am going to restore the chassis leg to here. So that way I'll chop the chassis leg there, inspect it from the inside. If it's okay, then I'm good to go. If it's not, then I'll think about going further and ripping it all apart. I'd rather do that than commit to ripping it all apart and then doing way more work than I need to. So basically what I need to do now is go through and mark all of these spot welds and drill them all out. Basically that line that I made with the paint pen, that's as high as I really want to go. I don't want to have to take all of this off if I don't want to. And it doesn't matter how far I go downwards because we're replacing the majority of this anyway. The only bit is this here. We do keep this. And the chassis leg attaches on the back of this here. You can go through and clean it all up if you really want. I will clean it up better once we've pulled everything apart, because I'm going to have to go through and clean everything and then put etch primer on this because we obviously don't want it to rust. The good signs are that there is absolutely no rust in this now. And if you are going to do projects like this and leave them, and you think you're going to be leaving them for a couple of months, maybe you don't have the time, maybe you're going away overseas, whatever, just spray some primer over it, because the worst thing is if it starts to rust and then you have to clean up the rust. Right, so what I'm going to do is I've gone through and I've marked all of the spot welds. So now I'm going to grab the hole punch again and just punch the centers of these. It just helps the drill from not going off center, because if you go off center with your spot welds, then your spot welds aren't going to let go, and that just kind of sucks. So just to show you, if I was actually doing this so that I wanted to save the steel underneath, I'd only drill through the top layer of steel here. It's pretty hard to see, but basically that spot weld in the center of the frame there, I've only drilled through the top layer of steel. So the only reason you want to go through the top layer of steel is that if we were trying to preserve the chassis rail underneath, but we had to take it out for some reason, maybe there was some rust underneath here we had to get to, but we were still using the chassis rail, then you just drill through this top skin, and that means that when you come to weld it all together later, you've got something to weld to underneath. If you drill right through, then you've got to try and fill that hole up, and it's just, you don't want to do that. So in our case, because I'm replacing that chassis rail, I'm just going to keep drilling until I know I've definitely gone through the top skin, or if I go through both, I don't really care either. Alright, so there you have it. For a bit of a recap, we drilled out all the spot welds in the boot using an 8mm spot weld drill bit. We then came to the side of the car, wire wheeled off all of the paint and the seam sealer, and that exposed all the spot welds I need to drill out, and now we're drilling those out. So I'm going to finish doing that. I won't time lapse the rest of it because there's a lot of this to do, but that gives you an idea of what I'm doing. So when everything's drilled out, we'll have a look and see what the game plan is from there. So I've pretty much finished this side of the car. The only thing I've got to do is I've got to pull the back seats out of the car properly so that I can drill out a few more spot welds on the inside of the car to free up this chassis leg. But basically, that is all I needed to do on the inside here. So in a couple of spots I went right through, but for the most part, that is what we're working with. So starting from here, again, we're probably going to cut the chassis rail through there, at least we're going to start with. So I've started the spot welds drilled out from there, all the way around, and they stop there, and then from there, the spot welds go underneath the car, as you can see there. So I think that's going to conclude today's video. Pretty happy with the progress. Well, we're 6 days in and we have started removing the chassis rails. The whole back side of the car is out and I've started cleaning up a lot of parts too. So I'm pretty happy. I'm not doing this 10 hours a day. I'm only anywhere from probably 3-4 hours through to 7 hours a day I'm doing at the moment. And then when I go back to work next week, things will slow down a little bit, which is why I'm trying to get as much done as I can now. But I think in the next video will probably be me ripping these chassis legs out completely. I'm going to do a little bit of work off camera, just drilling out the rest of the spot welds. You've seen it now, you know how it works. When I get to the point I'll pull out all of the chassis legs, I will run through all of that with you so you can see how it's done. If you do have any questions, please let me know. If you want to know sizes of anything or what I'm using, just ask down in the comments and I'll answer. But again, thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe if you want to see us rip this car apart. Once I've done this rear end restoration, we are heading up the front of the car. I'm tempted to pull the engine and gearbox completely and clean everything up, so that's a bit of a task. I will drive the car for a little while once I've fixed the rear end of the car, just so that I can see what's happened, any noises, figure that out, and then once I've done that I'll move on to sorting the front of the car out, rather than do everything and then not know where noises and things are coming from that I may need to fix. So again, thank you for watching and I will see you in the next video.